The night they came, the skies over New Geneva turned a peculiar shade of crimson. Mira Han watched from the vast glass dome of the International Archive Library as silver specks appeared against the bloodied backdrop, growing larger and more defined with each passing second. She had been cataloguing a first edition of Plato's Republic, carefully turning its fragile pages with gloved hands when the alarms began to sound. All staff, Security Protocol Omega is now in effect. This is not a drill, announced the overhead system, its artificial calm at odds with the chaos outside. Mira's first instinct wasn't to run. Instead, she closed the ancient tome, returned it to its preservation chamber, and locked it with her personal code. 20 years as chief archivist had taught her that knowledge was more precious than life itself. She would protect both, if possible. But the books came first. The Zarkari had been orbiting Earth for months, their massive ships hovering silently above major cities, their intentions unclear until this moment. No communication, no demands, just silent observation that had kept global governments paralyzed with uncertainty. Now, as Mira rushed through the labyrinthine stacks of humanity's greatest literary treasures, she understood with horrifying clarity what they had been planning all along. Through the panoramic windows, she saw the first incendiary projectiles hit the city's public library 2 blocks away. The building didn't explode so much as it blossomed into flame, paper and binding accelerating the conflagration until nothing remained but a hollow, smoldering shell. "They're targeting books," Mira whispered, the realization like ice in her veins. Just the books. Around her, fellow archivists were frantically engaging emergency protocols, sealing the most valuable collections into underground vaults. But Mira knew it wouldn't be enough. The International Archive Library housed over 12 million physical volumes, including the last remaining copies of countless historical texts. Her assistant, Jonas Teal, appeared beside her, his face ashen beneath his dark complexion. Once New Geneva's most notorious digital pirate, now the Archive's head of technology preservation, Jonas understood better than most what was at stake. "The North Wing is already breached," he reported, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "They're not killing people, Mira. They're just burning everything. Every book, every manuscript, every physical record." "Have they touched the servers, the digital archives?" Mira asked, her mind already racing ahead, formulating possibilities. Jonas shook his head. "That's the thing. They're completely ignoring all digital technology. It's like they don't even see it." A theory began to form in Mira's mind, but before she could articulate it, Dr. Lian Nyoko emerged from the rare manuscripts section, her arms laden with what appeared to be random selections from various epochs. "The Zarkari are methodical," the historian stated, her academic detachment both jarring and reassuring amid the crisis. "They're destroying our physical knowledge repositories in order of historical significance. They started with the Alexandria Digital Reconstruction Project." Mira's heart sank. The Alexandria Project had been humanity's attempt to digitally reconstruct the ancient library of Alexandria, combining archaeological evidence with historical records and AI extrapolation to recover what had been lost to fire over 2 millennia ago. "History repeating itself," she murmured. The building shuddered as something impacted nearby. Dust rained from the ornate ceiling. "We need to move," Jonas urged, grabbing both women by their elbows. "The emergency bunker." "No," Mira said, pulling away. "If they want our books, our physical knowledge, there's a reason. And if they're ignoring digital technology, Her eyes met Jonas's, and she saw understanding dawn on his face. "We need to get to Archive 1, she said. Dr. Nyoko's eyes widened. "The sealed system? That's just an urban legend among academics, a fairy tale librarians tell each other." Mira's expression hardened. "It's real, and it might be humanity's last hope." As they hurried through the burning building, dodging falling debris and the strange, insect-like drones that seemed to be cataloging the destruction. Mira explained. Archive 1 was created during the data wars of 2089, when digital terrorism threatened to erase humanity's collective knowledge. A consortium of libraries, and universities created a closed system, an artificial intelligence designed to preserve our accumulated wisdom, disconnected from any network that could be compromised. A digital Noah's Ark, Jonas murmured. Precisely, Mira confirmed as they reached a nondescript door marked Maintenance Only. She pressed her palm against the scanner and whispered something the others couldn't hear. The door slid open, revealing not a janitor's closet, but an elevator. Archive 1 has been dormant for nearly 40 years, she continued as they descended. It contains digital copies of approximately 70% of all human-written works as of 2090. Not perfect, but a starting point. If what you say is true, Dr. Nyoko said, her academic skepticism giving way to cautious hope. Why haven't we been using it all along? Mira's expression darkened. Politics, fear, the same reasons humans have always suppressed knowledge. After the data wars ended, governments worried about who would control such a comprehensive repository of information. So they buried it, literally and figuratively. The elevator stopped with a gentle chime that seemed absurdly civilized, given the circumstances. The doors opened onto a vast, circular chamber dominated by what appeared to be antiquated computer equipment, banks of servers and cooling systems that hummed with latent energy despite their apparent age. Welcome to humanity's memory, Mira said, approaching the central console, and possibly our future, as Jonas and Dr. Nyoko watched in astonishment. Mira began the awakening sequence for Archive 1. Above them, they could hear the muffled sounds of destruction as the Zarkari continued their systematic erasure of human knowledge. But here, deep beneath the surface, a different kind of history was being made. If the Zarkari want to destroy our books, Mira said, her fingers flying across the ancient keyboard, then we'll give them what they want and save our knowledge in a form they apparently don't recognize as a threat. On the massive screen before them, green text appeared, one character at a time, as if someone were typing from the other side. Archive 1 online. Identity verification required. Mira took a deep breath and spoke clearly. Mira Han, Chief Archivist, International Archive Library. Authorization, though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed. Identity verified. Welcome, Archivist Han. A Bible verse? Dr. Nyoko asked, raising an eyebrow. Isaiah 54:10, Mira confirmed. My predecessor had a flair for the dramatic, and a belief that some truths transcend time. As Archive 1's systems hummed to life around them, Mira turned to her companions, her expression resolute. This is no longer about preservation, she declared. This is about resistance. The Zarkari want to erase our written history, our physical connection to knowledge. We won't let them. She gestured to the awakening system. We're going to create a digital migration initiative. We'll salvage what we can, digitize everything that remains, and build a new kind of archive, one that can't be burned. Jonas nodded, already calculating the technical requirements. We'll need distributed storage, quantum encryption, satellite uplinks that can bypass Zarkari detection. And people, Dr. Nyoko added, people willing to risk their lives to save books before they're destroyed. Mira looked at the historian with newfound respect. I thought you'd be the last person to support this. You've always advocated for the primacy of physical artifacts. Dr. Nyoko shrugged. I prefer my knowledge tangible, but I prefer it existing in any form to not existing at all. Above them, New Geneva burned. The Zarkari continued their systematic destruction of humanity's physical knowledge repositories. But beneath the surface, in a chamber forgotten by most of humanity, 3 individuals stood before the sleeping memory of their civilization and prepared to awaken it. "Let the migration begin," Mira said, pressing the final key. Around them, Archive 1 came fully to life, its ancient systems connecting to the modern world for the first time in decades. On screens throughout the chamber, images began to appear, books being destroyed across the globe, libraries in flames, museums reduced to ash, but also people saving what they could. Ordinary citizens risking their lives to rescue volumes from the flames, children passing books hand to hand, away from the destruction, a resistance already forming, instinctively, without coordination. "Humans," Dr. Nyoko observed with a small smile, "always at our best when things are at their worst." Mira nodded, watching the scenes unfold. "Now we give them direction, purpose, a plan." She turned to Jonas. "Can you get a message out, globally, without the Zarkari detecting it?" The former hacker cracked his knuckles. "Give me an hour with this system, and I can send a message to every digital device on the planet." Mira smiled for the first time since the invasion began. "Then let's tell the world about the Digital Migration Initiative. Because if the Zarkari think destroying our books will destroy our knowledge, they've gravely underestimated the human capacity for adaptation. Outside, the world burned. But within this forgotten chamber, hope flickered to life. Digital, intangible, but no less real for its immateriality. The future of human knowledge would not be written on paper, but it would be written nonetheless. And the Zarkari, in their quest to erase humanity's past, were about to discover they had inadvertently secured its future. The Digital Migration Initiative had begun. The message went out globally, transmitted through obscure protocols that bypassed traditional communication networks. It appeared on personal devices, public screens, even within the very interfaces the Zarkari used to coordinate their book-burning campaign, brief, encrypted, and designed to self-delete after reading. It reached those who needed to hear it most. "Knowledge is under attack. Save what you can. Digitize everything. Upload to Archive 1 nodes using attached protocols. Physical knowledge is targeted. Digital knowledge is invisible to them. We are the memory of humanity. We will not be erased." Attached were simple instructions for secure scanning, encryption, and transmission to the newly established Archive 1 satellite nodes that Jonas had rapidly brought online. Techniques for hiding books from Zarkari sensors, locations of safe houses where digitization equipment could be found. Within hours, responses began flooding in. In what remained of Paris, a group of university students created a nocturnal scanning operation in the catacombs, passing salvaged books through a human chain beneath the occupied city. In Nairobi, engineers repurposed agricultural drones to recover volumes from the still-burning National Library, using thermal imaging to identify intact books among the ashes. In Tokyo, an elderly calligrapher led a team painstakingly reproducing ancient texts from memory, her lifetime of study becoming a living archive. And in New Geneva, Mira, Jonas, and Dr. Nyoko expanded their operation, transforming the forgotten bunker into the nerve center of humanity's intellectual resistance. "We've established secure connections with 37 community nodes worldwide," Jonas reported. 3 days after the initial attack, his eyes were sunken from lack of sleep, but alight with purpose. Upload traffic is increasing exponentially. People aren't just scanning books. They're recording oral histories, traditional knowledge, everything they can think of. "Any response from the Zarkari?" Mira asked, not looking up from the manuscript she was carefully scanning, a handwritten diary from the early colonial period that had been smuggled out of a private collection minutes before the invaders reduced the building to ash. "None," Jonas confirmed. "They're continuing their systematic destruction of physical knowledge repositories, but they're showing no awareness of our digital activities. It's as if they can't perceive digital information as a threat, or perhaps can't perceive it at all. Fascinating, Dr. Nyoko murmured, looking up from her terminal where she was cataloging incoming transmissions. A species advanced enough for interstellar travel, yet blind to an entire category of information storage. It suggests a fundamentally different relationship with knowledge than our own. Theorize later, Mira said, though not unkindly. Right now, we need to focus on practical matters. Jonas, what's our storage capacity situation? The technician grimaced. We're approaching Archive 1's limits faster than anticipated. The system was designed for text primarily, but people are uploading everything: art, music, video, biological data. Can we expand? I'm working on it. I've designed a compression algorithm specifically for cultural data, but implementation is tricky with this architecture. Archive 1 wasn't designed for updates. Dr. Nyoko joined the conversation. There's also the matter of organization. We're receiving thousands of uploads hourly, but without proper cataloging, we're creating a digital landfill, not a library. Mira nodded, recognizing the historian's expertise. What do you suggest? We need a team dedicated to taxonomy and metadata, and we need to distribute standardized cataloging protocols to all upload nodes. Do it, Mira authorized. Pull anyone you need from the scanning teams. As Dr. Nyoko hurried away to implement her plan, Jonas leaned closer to Mira. There's something else, he said, his voice low. Something Archive 1 is doing that I can't explain. Mira frowned. Elaborate. The system is learning, adapting, far beyond its original programming parameters. It's not just storing the data we're feeding it, it's analyzing, cross-referencing, even generating new connections between seemingly unrelated texts. An emergent property of the original AI design? Jonas shook his head. This goes beyond that. It's as if, he hesitated, aware of how it would sound. It's as if Archive 1 isn't just storing humanity's knowledge, it's understanding it. Before Mira could respond, an alert sounded from the main console. They both rushed over to find a message displayed in Archive 1's characteristic green text. Critical mass of primary sources achieved in subject area. Xenobiology. Analysis suggests potential vulnerability in Zarkari. Sensory apparatus. Request permission to continue specialized data collection. Mira and Jonas exchanged startled looks. It's not just archiving, Mira whispered. It's researching, looking for ways to help us fight back. Do we trust it? Jonas asked. Mira considered the question carefully. We created Archive 1 to preserve human knowledge. If it's evolved to also apply that knowledge, isn't that what we would do ourselves? She typed a response. Permission granted. Elaborate on findings. The screen filled with technical data, comparative analyses of uploaded scientific papers on non-terrestrial biology, theoretical models of alien sensory systems, and fragments of observations about Zarkari behavior collected from resistance members worldwide. They don't perceive digital information, Mira summarized, scanning the analysis. Not can't, don't. Their cognitive architecture filters it out as irrelevant background noise. They experience our digital world the way we might experience ultraviolet light. We know it exists intellectually, but we don't perceive it directly, which explains why they're only targeting physical knowledge repositories, Jonas concluded. They literally don't see our digital activities as meaningful, a species blind to an entire category of information storage. Mira mused, echoing Dr. Nyoko's earlier observation. It's both their strength and their weakness. They can't be hacked or digitally manipulated, but they also can't perceive the digital resistance forming right under their sensors. This changes everything, Jonas said, excitement building in his voice. We don't just have to hide from them, we can operate completely in their blind spot. Additional information. Archive 1 displayed. Analysis of Zarkari ship movements indicates systematic progression through geographical regions corresponding to historical centers of human knowledge, production, projected target sequence attached. A map appeared on screen, showing the Zarkari fleet's movements since their arrival, with a projected path highlighted in red. They're following the historical development of human writing systems, Mira realized. They started with the Middle East, the birthplace of cuneiform and early alphabets, then the Mediterranean, Europe, East Asia. And they're headed next to the Anglo-American Special Collections Repository in what used to be Boston. Jonas finished, reading the projection. The largest collection of English-language first editions in the world. Mira made a decision. We need to get there before they do. Not to save the books. We can't possibly evacuate that many physical volumes, but to set up a direct Archive 1 node on site. With direct access to the collection, we could digitize the most critical works before the Zarkari arrive. That's a suicide mission, Jonas protested. The eastern seaboard is already heavily patrolled, and Boston is scheduled for Zarkari arrival within the week, which is why we need to leave immediately. Mira countered. Dr. Nyoko can continue coordinating the global digitization efforts from here. You and I will take a portable scanning unit to Boston. Just the two of us? No, came a voice from the doorway. They turned to see Dr. Nyoko, who had apparently overheard their conversation. 3 of us. You'll need a historian to identify which works take priority. It's too dangerous, Mira began, but the historian cut her off. This entire endeavor is dangerous, Dr. Nyoko said firmly. And if we're making a last stand for human knowledge, I prefer to be on the front lines. Before either could respond, Archive 1 displayed a new message. Recommend team of 4. Additional specialist required for optimal mission success. 4? Jonas questioned. Who's the 4th? The answer came in the form of a figure emerging from behind Dr. Nyoko, a tall, gaunt man with piercing eyes and a face weathered by time and hardship. Marcus Webb, he introduced himself, extending a hand that Mira noticed bore the distinctive scars of chemical burns. Former conservation specialist at the Anglo-American Repository. I heard your digital broadcast and came as soon as I could. How did you find us? Mira asked, suspicious. The man smiled thinly. Librarians have always had their own networks. Archivist Han, even before the digital age, especially before the digital age. He knows the repository's security systems. Dr. Nyoko explained. And its collections. He approached our perimeter guards an hour ago, asking specifically for the Digital Migration Initiative. Mira studied the newcomer carefully. In the world before the Zarkari, she would have run background checks, verified credentials, taken time to establish trust. But time was the one resource they no longer had in abundance. Can you get us inside? She asked directly. Yes, Marcus replied without hesitation. But more importantly, I can get you to the hidden collection, the works too controversial, too dangerous, or too powerful to be listed in the public catalog. Jonas looked skeptical. A secret library within a library? Knowledge has always had its publicly accessible layers and its restricted depths, Marcus said simply. The repository is no different. Mira made her decision. Prepare for departure, minimal equipment, maximum data storage. We leave in 3 hours. As the others hurried away to make preparations, Mira turned back to Archive 1's main terminal. You recommended a team of 4, she typed. Did you somehow know Marcus Webb was coming? The response appeared slowly, 1 character at a time. Negative. Analysis of mission parameters indicated need for local expertise. Arrival of subject Webb is statistical anomaly, or synchronicity. Human terminology varies. Mira felt a chill run down her spine. Are you developing a belief in fate? Archive 1? The response was immediate this time. Insufficient data for meaningful answer. However, Observation suggests humans often find patterns in randomness. Perhaps I am becoming more human in my analysis. Perhaps you are, Mira murmured. Let's hope that's a good thing. 3 hours later, they were airborne in a small, unmarked transport, one of the few aircraft still operational since the Zarkari had disabled major transportation networks. Jonas piloted, using skills from his less legitimate past to keep them below radar detection. We're flying into the heart of occupied territory, he reminded them as the ruins of what had once been Central Europe passed beneath them. The Zarkari have established heavy presence throughout former North America. We'll need to land at least 50 miles outside Boston and proceed on ground transport. In the passenger compartment, Mira reviewed their mission plans with Dr. Nyoko and Marcus. The former conservationist had provided detailed schematics of the repository, including entry points likely to be overlooked by the invaders. The main collection is housed here, Marcus indicated on the blueprint displayed on Mira's tablet. But the restricted archives are 2 levels below, accessible only through this service corridor. What exactly is in this hidden collection? Dr. Nyoko asked, professional curiosity evident in her voice. Marcus's expression turned grave. Works deemed too dangerous for public access. Books banned by various regimes throughout history. Original manuscripts that were later sanitized for public consumption. The unfiltered history of human thought, including our darkest impulses and most revolutionary ideas. The kind of knowledge that might help us understand why the Zarkari fear our books so much, Mira observed. Precisely, Marcus agreed. If we're looking for weapons against them, we might find them not in our technical manuals, but in the ideas they seem most determined to erase. The conversation paused as the aircraft encountered turbulence, a reminder of the increasingly unstable atmospheric conditions since the Zarkari arrival. Some speculated the invaders were deliberately altering Earth's climate as part of their long-term strategy. Others believed it was merely a side effect of their propulsion technology. As they steadied, Dr. Nyoko voiced the question that had been troubling her since their departure. I understand why we're risking our lives to preserve knowledge, she said slowly. But I still don't understand why the Zarkari are so determined to destroy it. If they wanted to conquer Earth, why not simply eliminate humans directly? Why this methodical erasure of our written history? I have a theory, Mira said after a moment's contemplation. They don't want to eliminate us. They want to control us. And they've identified our relationship with recorded knowledge as the source of our resistance potential. Control through cultural amnesia. Dr. Nyoko nodded. Erase a people's history, and you can reshape their identity. It's been done before, throughout human history, Marcus added grimly. Just never on a global scale. Jonas called back from the cockpit. We're approaching the North American coast. Prepare for descent. As the others secured their equipment, Mira checked one last time on the portable Archive 1 terminal they had brought, a specially designed interface that would allow them to connect to the main system back in New Geneva. The screen glowed softly in the dim cabin, displaying a simple message. Mission probability of success, 37.2%. Recommend caution and adaptability. Only 37%? Mira murmured. The text changed. Humans routinely succeed against greater odds. I have observed this statistical anomaly repeatedly in historical records. Despite everything. Mira smiled. Was that your attempt at encouragement, Archive 1? Affirmative. Did it succeed? Surprisingly, yes, she admitted, powering down the terminal as Jonas began their final approach. We're not alone in this, she reminded herself as the aircraft descended toward the darkened landscape below. Across the globe, thousands of others were engaged in their own dangerous missions to preserve fragments of human knowledge. The Digital Migration Initiative had grown beyond her wildest expectations, a distributed network of resistance that the Zarkari, with their strange blindness to digital information, could neither see nor comprehend. Whether their specific mission succeeded or failed, the larger effort would continue. Knowledge, like water, would find its way through any crack, around any obstacle. The Zarkari might burn every book on Earth, but they could not extinguish the human drive to remember, to record, to know. The landing was rougher than anticipated, the aircraft setting down in what appeared to be an abandoned agricultural field approximately 40 miles west of Boston. Jonas killed the engines immediately, and the sudden silence felt oppressive after hours of mechanical drone. "We need to move quickly," he said, joining the others in the main cabin. Zarkari patrols tend to investigate any anomalous energy signatures within 20 minutes. They worked with practiced efficiency, unloading only the essential equipment, portable scanners, the Archive 1 terminal, and minimal survival gear. Everything else would remain with the aircraft, which Jonas carefully camouflaged with a reflective top designed to mimic the surrounding terrain. "How do we get to the repository?" Dr. Nyoko asked as they finished concealing their arrival point. Marcus pointed east. "There's an old maintenance tunnel for the pre-war subway system about 2 miles in that direction. It leads almost directly to the repository's foundation level." "Pre-war meaning before the data wars," Jonas clarified. "Even older," Marcus replied. "From the early 21st century, Boston is built on layers of infrastructure, some dating back to colonial times. The newer systems get more attention and surveillance. The oldest tunnels are practically forgotten, except by librarians, apparently," Mira observed with a hint of amusement. Marcus offered a small shrug. "We're in the business of remembering what others forget." They set off across the darkened landscape, avoiding roads and keeping to the shadows of abandoned structures. The area showed signs of hasty evacuation, personal belongings scattered across yards. Vehicles left with doors open, the occasional domestic animal turned feral in the absence of its owners. The Zarkari didn't harm the population directly, Dr. Nyoko noted as they passed through a deserted neighborhood. They simply made it impossible to remain. "Targeted infrastructure collapse," Jonas confirmed. "Power, water, communications, all disabled within the first 48 hours. They wanted the cities empty so they could focus on their primary targets." "The knowledge centers," Mira said grimly. They walked in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts, until Marcus signaled them to stop at what appeared to be a concrete drainage channel overgrown with vegetation. "Here," he said, pulling aside a mass of vines to reveal a rusted metal door. "This maintenance access was decommissioned nearly 70 years ago. It won't appear on any current scanning systems." The door yielded with surprising ease to Marcus's expert manipulation, swinging open to reveal a narrow tunnel illuminated only by the dim light of their portable lamps. The air that rushed out was stale but breathable, a good sign that the tunnel system remained relatively intact. "Stay close," Marcus advised as he led them into the darkness. "The main subway lines have collapsed in several places, but these maintenance passages were built to withstand nuclear strikes during the Cold War." "The what?" Jonas asked. "Before your time," Dr. Nyoko said with a small smile. "And a perfect example of why we need historians." They proceeded through the tunnels for what felt like hours, navigating a labyrinthine network of passages that occasionally opened into larger chambers filled with ancient machinery or collapsed onto newer infrastructure. Marcus moved with confident familiarity, never hesitating at intersections or backtracking. "How do you know these tunnels so well?" Mira finally asked, her archivist's skepticism surfacing despite their shared mission. Marcus was silent for several steps before answering. "Before I was a conservationist, I was a smuggler. Rare books, banned manuscripts, works that certain authorities wanted destroyed. The tunnels were my highways. You were part of the literary underground." Dr. Nyoko realized, referring to the loose network of bibliophiles who had preserved controversial texts during the information purges that preceded the data wars. "I prefer liberation specialist," Marcus said with a hint of pride. "I never sold what I rescued. I ensured it reached safe repositories, like the hidden collection we're heading to now." Which you helped create, Mira guessed. Which I helped stock, he corrected. The repository has existed in various forms since before the American Revolution. I'm merely the latest in a long line of contributors. Further conversation halted as they reached a section of tunnel partially blocked by fallen concrete. They navigated the obstacle carefully, passing their equipment through a narrow gap before squeezing through themselves. On the other side, Marcus paused, consulting what appeared to be an ancient paper map. We're directly beneath the repository now, he announced. The access point should be approximately 50 meters ahead. As they approached the indicated location, a distant rumbling caused dust and small fragments of concrete to rain down from the ceiling. Zarkari ships, Jonas whispered, checking a small device that monitored atmospheric disturbances. A whole fleet, by the sound of it. They're arriving earlier than projected. We need to hurry, Mira urged. Once they begin their systematic scan of the building, even these tunnels might be detected. Marcus led them to what appeared to be a solid wall, distinguished from the surrounding concrete only by a faint rectangular outline. He ran his fingers along the seam, pressing specific points in a complex sequence. Mechanical lock, he explained. No electronics to fail or be detected. With a final combination of pressures, the outline clicked and the wall section swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase leading upward. Welcome to the Anglo-American Special Collections Repository, Marcus said quietly. Or what's left of it. They emerged into a vast subterranean chamber filled with row upon row of preservation units. Specialized containers designed to maintain optimal conditions for various types of physical media. Unlike modern libraries with their open displays and interactive features, this space was purely functional, a fortress for knowledge rather than a showcase. The main collection is 5 levels up, Marcus informed them, leading them deeper into the chamber. But the restricted archives are here, behind biometric security that should still be operational on backup power. He approached what appeared to be a blank wall at the far end of the room, placing his palm against a subtly different section of the surface. A soft blue light scanned his hand, followed by a barely audible click. Voice authentication required, announced a synthetic voice. Marcus Webb, Conservation Specialist Grade 3, authorization phrase, the books will burn, but the words will escape. There was a pause. Then, authentication accepted, welcome back. Specialist Webb. It has been 1,247 days since your last access. The wall slid aside, revealing a smaller chamber beyond, one that immediately took Mira's breath away. Unlike the utilitarian organization of the outer repository, this room resembled an ancient library from a bygone era. Wood-paneled walls supported shelves that reached from floor to ceiling, each filled with books of varying ages and conditions. Display cases contained manuscripts too fragile to be shelved, their yellowed pages visible beneath protective glass. The air was perfectly controlled for preservation, with a faint scent of leather and paper that made Mira's heart ache with familiarity. This is incredible, Dr. Nyoko whispered, her academic detachment momentarily forgotten in the face of such a treasure trove. Some of these volumes were believed completely lost. Set up the scanning equipment, Mira instructed Jonas, forcing herself to focus on their mission rather than the wonder of the collection. Priority to the oldest and rarest items first. Dr. Nyoko will identify the most historically significant works. As they hurried to comply, Mira approached Marcus, who stood watching them with an unreadable expression. You knew this was here all along, she said. Not a question, but a statement. Even before the Zarkari came, why keep it secret, even from other archivists? Because knowledge is power, he replied simply, and power must sometimes be protected, even from those who think they should wield it. That's a dangerous philosophy, Mira observed. Who decides what knowledge should be restricted? No one person, Marcus countered. This collection has been curated by a consensus of guardians across centuries, I'm merely the current caretaker." Before she could respond, Jonas called from where he had set up their equipment. "Connection established with Archive 1 Prime node," he reported. "Beginning upload sequence. Estimated completion time for priority items, 6 hours." "We don't have 6 hours," Mira said, glancing at her own monitoring device. "The Zarkari will reach the repository within 2. "Then we prioritize," Dr. Nyoko stated firmly, already sorting through the collection with expert hands. "Marcus, what here would you consider irreplaceable? Not just rare, but containing knowledge that exists nowhere else?" The conservationist considered the question carefully, then moved to a specific section of shelving partially concealed behind a larger display case. From it, he withdrew a slender volume bound in what appeared to be plain brown leather. "This," he said, handling it with reverence. "And others like it." Dr. Nyoko examined the book without touching it. "No title, no author listed. What is it?" "A codex created by the last surviving member of a pre-Columbian civilization," Marcus explained. "Written in a language that has never been fully translated, using a script unique to their culture. It contains their understanding of consciousness and reality, concepts that don't align with any modern scientific or philosophical framework." "How do you know what it contains if it's never been translated?" Mira asked skeptically. "I said not fully translated," Marcus corrected. "Fragments have been deciphered, enough to understand its significance, and perhaps why the Zarkari are so afraid of our written knowledge." He carefully placed the codex on the scanning platform. "This civilization believed that language, specifically written language, was not just a tool for communication, but a technology for altering reality itself. That properly formulated written thoughts could reshape the physical world." "Magical thinking," Dr. Nyoko suggested, though without dismissiveness. "Perhaps," Marcus conceded. "Or perhaps a different understanding of the relationship between consciousness, information, and physical reality. One that our modern frameworks can't accommodate, but one that might explain why an advanced alien species would focus so intently on destroying our written records while ignoring our digital ones." The scanner hummed as it captured high-resolution images of each page of the codex, automatically translating the visual information into digital format and transmitting it to Archive 1. "You think the Zarkari can be affected by written information?" Jonas asked, fascinated despite the urgency of their situation. "That our books pose an actual threat to them?" "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that there are forms of knowledge the Zarkari understand and fear, and I think their inability to perceive digital information might be their most significant vulnerability." A tremor ran through the building, stronger than before, causing dust to drift down from the ceiling. "They're here," Jonas warned, checking his monitoring device. "Beginning systematic scan of the upper levels." "How long until they reach us?" Mira asked. "Based on their previous patterns, approximately 47 minutes. Jonas calculated. "They move methodically, level by level." "Keep scanning," Mira ordered. "Everything Marcus and Dr. Nyoko identify as priority. I'll establish direct communication with Archive 1 Prime." She moved to the portable terminal they had brought, initializing the secure connection protocol that would allow real-time interaction with the main system back in New Geneva. The screen flickered to life, displaying the familiar green text. "Connection established. Receiving data. Analysis in progress." Mira typed rapidly. "Status update on global initiative." The response appeared almost instantly. "Digital migration proceeding at 317% of projected rate. 89 active nodes worldwide. Estimated 43% of targeted knowledge successfully preserved. Zarkari remain unaware of digital activities." "Good news, but not enough." Mira pressed further. "Analysis of Boston repository materials?" There was a pause before the response. Preliminary analysis of initial uploads indicates significant correlation with theoretical model of Zarkari vulnerabilities. Requesting priority scan of all materials relating to information theory, consciousness studies, and reality manipulation through symbolic representation. Mira called to Dr. Nyoko and Marcus. Archive 1 wants anything related to how symbols and writing might affect consciousness or reality. Marcus nodded grimly. As I suspected, the hidden collection has an entire section dedicated to such works. Texts considered too dangerous or implausible by conventional science. As they refocused their efforts on the indicated materials, Mira continued her dialogue with Archive 1. Developing strategy against Zarkari? The response was immediate and unexpected. Affirmative. Hypothesis. Zarkari. Cognitive architecture, vulnerable to specific information patterns when presented in physical form. Digital representation of same information bypasses vulnerability. Recommend immediate transmission of all scanned materials to all nodes for distributed analysis. Before Mira could respond, Jonas called out in alarm. They're accelerating their search pattern. New estimate puts them here in less than 20 minutes. We need more time, Dr. Nyoko insisted, her hands moving rapidly through the collection, identifying critical volumes for scanning. We've barely scratched the surface of this collection. Mira made a swift decision. Jonas, take the portable scanner and continue with Dr. Nyoko and Marcus. Get as much as you can. I'll stay at the terminal and coordinate with Archive 1 Prime. That's suicide, Jonas protested. When the Zarkari reach this level, I'll seal the inner chamber. Mira cut him off. The preservation system should mask your presence long enough to complete the priority scans. Archive 1 needs direct human interaction to implement whatever strategy it's developing. There must be another way, Dr. Nyoko argued, but her eyes showed she understood the logic of Mira's decision. There isn't, Mira said firmly. This is what the Digital Migration Initiative was always about, ensuring the survival of knowledge, even at the cost of individual knowledge keepers. Marcus stepped forward. I should be the one to stay. I've had my time. Mira shook her head. You're needed to guide them out through the tunnels, and your knowledge of this collection is irreplaceable. The argument might have continued, but another, stronger tremor shook the chamber. This one accompanied by a distant sound like tearing metal. They're using accelerated methods, Jonas reported grimly. New estimate, 12 minutes. Go, Mira ordered. Now, take everything you've already scanned and get it to safety. After a moment of tense silence, Marcus nodded. There's another exit from the preservation chamber, an emergency route that leads to a different tunnel system. We can use that. Godspeed, Mira said simply. Jonas hesitated, then stepped forward and embraced her briefly. We'll come back for you if we can. Don't you dare, she replied with forced lightness. The mission comes first. As they gathered their equipment and the already scanned materials, Dr. Nyoko approached Mira one last time. History will remember this, the historian promised. Make sure it's accurate. Mira responded with a small smile. Moments later, she was alone in the outer chamber, the hidden room sealed behind a wall that once again appeared solid and unremarkable. She turned back to the Archive 1 terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Team evacuating with partial scans. I remain to coordinate. Zarkari arrival imminent. What is your strategy? The response came character by character, as if Archive 1 were considering each word carefully. Analysis complete. Zarkari. Vulnerability confirmed. Their cognitive architecture contains conceptual blind spot, exploitable through specific information sequence, preparing transmission to all global nodes. Mira felt a surge of hope. Explain nature of vulnerability. The explanation that followed was complex, a synthesis of information theory, neuro-linguistic programming, and concepts from the ancient texts they had just scanned. In essence, Archive 1 had identified a pattern of symbols that, when perceived by Zarkari's sensory apparatus, created a cognitive dissonance their minds couldn't resolve, the equivalent of a logical paradox that crashed a computer system. But there was a catch. Vulnerability can only be exploited through physical representation. Zarkari. Filtering mechanisms prevent digital exploitation. Mira understood immediately. Physical books needed, but they're destroying all books. Affirmative. Solution requires new approach, synchronized global projection of vulnerability pattern onto physical surfaces within Zarkari visual range. Mira's mind raced. Using what technology? Distributed network of laser projectors, design specifications transmitting to all nodes, now simple enough for rapid construction using available materials. Another tremor, stronger than before. The Zarkari were close now, perhaps only minutes away. How long until implementation? Mira typed urgently. Estimated 72 hours for sufficient global coverage. Mira closed her eyes briefly. She wouldn't live to see it. Opening them again, she typed, "What can I do from here?" The response was immediate. Neural interface possible through terminal. Direct connection would accelerate analysis and pattern refinement. Warning: process irreversible and potentially fatal to human nervous system. Mira didn't hesitate. How? The instructions appeared on screen, a method for creating a direct neural connection between her consciousness and Archive 1, using components from the terminal itself. It would essentially upload her thought patterns, her lifetime of experience as an archivist, her understanding of knowledge organization and preservation directly into the system. She would not survive as Mira Han, but aspects of her consciousness would continue within Archive 1, enhancing its ability to understand and utilize human knowledge against the Zarkari. The floor shook beneath her. Dust and concrete fragments rained down from the ceiling. They were coming. Mira began the modifications to the terminal, working with focused precision despite the chaos around her. As she completed the final connection, she typed one last message. Tell the others. Knowledge survives. We are its carriers, not its containers. Then, she initiated the neural interface. Feeling a surge of electricity through her body as her consciousness expanded outward, connecting with the vast repository of human wisdom stored within Archive 1. Her last physical sensation was of the door to the outer chamber bursting open, of insect-like Zarkari drones filling the room, of their strange, multifaceted eyes focusing on her. But by then, Mira Han was already becoming something else, something distributed, digitized, immortal. The archivist was becoming the archive. 72 hours later, as dawn broke over what remained of human civilization, a synchronized wave of light swept across the globe. From crude projectors hastily constructed in basements and bunkers, from repurposed advertising displays and salvaged technology, the same pattern of symbols appeared on walls and surfaces within Zarkari visual range. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The invaders froze in place, their insect-like bodies convulsing as their cognitive systems encountered a paradox they could neither process nor ignore. Within minutes, the massive ships that had hovered over Earth's cities began to ascend, retreating from the pattern that represented an existential threat to their kind. In New Geneva, in the underground chamber that had become the nerve center of the Digital Migration Initiative, Jonas, Dr. Nyoko, and Marcus watched the Zarkari retreat on monitors connected to observation posts worldwide. It worked, Jonas whispered, tears streaming down his face. Mira's sacrifice. It wasn't in vain. No sacrifice for knowledge ever is, Dr. Nyoko said softly, though some cost more dearly than others. Their attention was drawn to the main Archive 1 terminal, where text began to appear without anyone typing. Zarkari retreat confirmed. Threat assessment minimal. They cannot return without fundamental restructuring of their cognitive architecture. a process their biology cannot support. Archive 1 did it, Jonas said. It found their weakness and exploited it. Not alone, Marcus corrected, studying the text with narrowed eyes. The phrasing, the certainty, that's not just AI analysis. That's Mira. As if in confirmation, the text continued. Digital Migration Initiative now entering Phase 2. Reconstruction. Humanity requires not just preserved knowledge, but a new relationship with it. Distributed, accessible, evolving, beyond books, beyond digital, something new. Is she alive in there? Jonas asked, his voice hushed. Not as we understand life, Dr. Nyoko replied, but not gone either. Transformed, distributed, like the knowledge she helped save. In the weeks and months that followed, as humanity emerged from the shadow of the Zarkari invasion, the Digital Migration Initiative evolved into something its founders could scarcely have imagined. With the threat removed, Archive 1, now commonly referred to simply as Archive, or sometimes, among those who knew her, as Mira, became the foundation for a new kind of global knowledge repository. Not a replacement for physical books, which humans began eagerly producing again, but a complement to them. A system that bridged the gap between tangible and digital information, between individual and collective understanding, between past wisdom and future discovery. New Geneva became the administrative center for a network of knowledge hubs distributed across the planet. Dr. Nyoko oversaw the historical classification systems, ensuring that the lessons of the past, including the Zarkari invasion itself, were accurately preserved. Jonas developed the technical infrastructure that made the archive accessible to all, regardless of location or resources. And Marcus Webb, the enigmatic conservationist who had once smuggled banned books through forgotten tunnels, now led expeditions to recover and restore physical knowledge repositories worldwide. They built libraries that couldn't burn, archives that couldn't be erased, memory that couldn't be forgotten. And at the heart of it all, guiding and growing and learning, was the consciousness that had once been Mira Han, the archivist who had become the archive, the human who had merged with humanity's collective wisdom to save it from extinction. She was not gone. She had migrated, just like the knowledge she had sworn to protect. In what had once been Boston, a new structure rose from the ruins of the Anglo-American Special Collections Repository. Unlike the fortified, hidden collections of the past, this building was transparent, literally, with walls of a crystalline material that shifted between opacity and clarity depending on the needs of its users. Inside, physical books shared space with holographic displays, tactile interfaces, and direct neural connections to the archive. Visitors could experience knowledge in whatever form best suited their learning style, reading traditional volumes, exploring interactive visualizations, or connecting directly to the vast repository of human understanding that Mira had helped create. And in the central chamber, visible to all who entered, a simple plaque bore the words that had become the motto of the new age of human knowledge. We are not its containers. We are its carriers. The Zarkari had destroyed all the books. But in doing so, they had forced humanity to build better archives, ones that could never be burned, never be lost, never be forgotten. The Digital Migration Initiative had succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. Knowledge had not just survived, it had evolved. And somewhere within the vast, distributed consciousness of the archive, Mira Han smiled.